As we start a new week, good evening once again. Day 97 of the Biden administration. Start of a big week for the president, whose 100th day in office arrives on Thursday. But this week begins against the mounting backdrop, of outrage over the latest police shootings and demands for transparency about officers' use of force in our country. Tonight, there's a state of emergency in Elizabeth City, North Carolina, where protests have taken place every day since Andrew Brown was shot and killed last Wednesday by sheriff's deputies who were serving a drug warrant. His family's been asking to see body cam video of that shooting. The request was finally met today, but the family says only 20 seconds were released from a single body camera this afternoon after multiple viewings of that 20-second clip. The family's attorneys describe what they saw.
This was an execution. Andrew Brown was in his driveway. The sheriff truck blocked him in his driveway, so he could not exit his driveway. Andrew had his hands on his steering wheel. He was not reaching for anything. He wasn't touching anything. He wasn't throwing anything around. He had his hands firmly on the steering wheel. They run up to his vehicle shooting.
Sure did.
He still sat there in his vehicle with his hands on the steering wheel while being shot at.
NBC News has not seen this body cam video. Brown's family has said at least 8 body-worn cameras were present at the killing of Andrew Brown. One witness told NBC News what she saw out of her nearby bedroom window.
They shot out the back window of his car, and he lost control, and he ended up across the street, and he hit a tree. They crowded around his car. They were shooting the front window of his car.
Now to another front, a different shooting, Spotsylvania County, Virginia, where Isaiah Brown is now fighting for his life after he was shot several times by a sheriff's deputy last Wednesday. The officer was responding to a 911 call from Brown during a family dispute. That body cam video has been released. And a warning here, it, like all the others, is disturbing.
Drop the gun! He's got a gun to his head. Drop the gun now! Stop walking towards me! Stop walking towards me! Stop! Stop! Shots fired! Shots fired! One down.
Perhaps you counted 7 shots. Isaiah Brown survived at least 7 gunshots. His family says the sheriff's deputy mistook a portable house phone for a gun.
Isaiah Brown had made clear a full 90 seconds or more before the deputies arrived on scene that he was unarmed and did not have a weapon. He had removed himself from the home, and he was outside walking on the street with this cordless phone.
My concern at this point is just for my son to hopefully come home alive.
The U.S. Justice Department is now zeroing in on allegations of police misconduct, today announcing what is called a pattern and practices investigation into the Louisville Metro Police Department. This was the second such announcement in less than a week's time. Last Wednesday, the department, you'll recall, said it was scrutinizing the Minneapolis PD. Well, this morning, Attorney General Merrick Garland laid out the scope of the investigation into the Louisville Police Department. It came over a year after Louisville officers shot and killed Breonna Taylor when they raided her apartment while executing a no-knock warrant.
The investigation will assess whether LMPD engages in a pattern or practice of using unreasonable force. It will determine whether LMPD engages in unconstitutional stops, searches, and seizures, as well as whether the department unlawfully executes search warrants on private homes.
I realize it's against a backdrop of a kind of solemn numbness. I realize we have limited time to toss you such a broad question. What stands out to you in these latest police-involved shootings, North Carolina and Virginia, Andrew Brown and Isaiah Brown?
Well, one thing that is very clear, particularly the shooting in North Carolina, they're going to and need to, as quickly as they can, to release as much video to the public. When you give people a snippet of an entire event that was deadly as it was, you actually do nothing but do no more than really just aggravate people and really create an environment of further distrust. So that is the one thing that needs to happen as it relates to all of these shootings, Brian, that have happened here very recently. We still have to keep in mind that each one of these cases have to be judged individually. But there's one common theme that continues to run through them, and that are men of color who are coming in contact with police unarmed and being killed. That is a serious issue and is continuing to create a further divide between police and community in this country. And we got to get our arms around this very quickly. And really, we need support from the White House in regards to this on a federal level. But there's state and local work that has to be done that is much more immediate and can be much more broad.
Joyce, in this day and age, especially with social media, we, news consumers, all of us, expect to see things now right away with very little vetting and God knows no editing. American news consumers are a savvy lot. It says something that the family's only been shown 20 seconds. Doesn't it hurt more to withhold what's out there?
This was a really strange decision by law enforcement because they certainly saw this clip before they played it for the family and their lawyers and have to have known what the reaction would be. And Chief Alexander is absolutely right. If the 21st Century Report on policing taught us anything, it's the criticality of transparency in policing, of earning the trust of the community by being transparent when something like this happens. I want to endorse something else he said, which is the importance of looking at each of these situations individually. But nonetheless, it's critical that A.G. Garland has shown a willingness to use pattern and practice investigations because there is a strong, disturbing trend of black men not emerging alive from these encounters.
Peter Baker, last night's Oscars were as much about this topic as they were about the movie business. Joe Biden comes to office with a full agenda, or so he thought. And while aides to the president have taken great pains to point out this subject matter was already a part of his agenda, it was already a big priority to him. Walk us through the delicate walk he has ahead of him on this policy.
Well, I think that's right, Brian. Look, this issue was a big front and center issue during the campaign last year. He campaigned as a contrast to President Trump's point of view, which was, law and order themed and not embracing the grievances in the streets. But it is a tough challenge for President Biden. He would like to be focused on the big spending plans that he's already pushing through Congress, one on infrastructure, one to come next week on family aid in various ways. And of course, now this just continues to push this inner issue front and center. He obviously will have to address it in this speech he's going to give, the functional equivalent of a State of the Union address to Congress later this week. He has not so far, taken action in the sense of using his executive power to try to do something about policing. He has stepped back to allow Congress to see if they can't come up with a deal. The House, of course, Democrats passed the George Floyd Justice Act last year. Hasn't gone anywhere in the Senate, but Senator Tim Scott, a Republican from South Carolina, has been working with Democrats to see if they can't come up with a bipartisan compromise that would get through the Senate. Biden has taken sort of a step back approach to see if they can't do something first. But at some point, the pressure will increase on him if they can't get Congress to act for him to find something to do using his executive power. And so far, that's been something he's wanted to avoid because legislation is more permanent, more sustained than executive action. But there's a great pressure on him to do something.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.